Hi, my name is Richard Stuttle and I'm the author of Chasing Rainbows, The Stolen Future of Caroline Ann Stuttle. Why did I write the book? There was a multitude of reasons really, so we need to go back to 2001 and Caroline, my sister, decided to do a gap year. She'd finished college and she wanted to go off to Australia with a friend of hers and travel around the country. We were great advocates for travel as a family. My father had been over to the US, mother had been around Italy working when she was younger. We'd been on lots of family holidays. I'd done a couple of winter seasons in the French Alps. So certainly we were encouraged to go traveling, and when Caroline wanted to go, I thought it was fantastic. April 2002, and she and a friend of hers had made their way from Sydney, made their way up to a place called Bundaberg, and in Bundaberg was famous for two things mainly, was Mon Repos, which is a turtle sanctuary, and for Bundaberg rum. And many backpackers went through and they do some fruit picking or some agricultural work and extend the visas, and you know, it was a well-known town for backpackers and for people travelling and working the way up the East Coast. So one evening she was staying in a campsite with a friend on one side of the town, and they had to cross a bridge, and then the town was on the other side. So one evening she was making her way back over the Burnett Bridge, and she was stopped, and this guy wanted her wallet, he wanted a mobile phone, wanted her purse. There was a struggle, she wasn't willing to let those go, and unfortunately he threw her over the railings and she lost her life. And I mean, we were, as a family, completely devastated. It's an understatement really. I was in the French Alps at the time and made my way back to the UK, and we started Caroline's Rainbow Foundation, which was really to help young backpackers and help young travellers travel in a safer environment. And we didn't want families to go through what we were going through and the horrific circumstances we'd found ourselves in, and we wanted to help educate the travel community about travel safety. So that was really how the charity came to be, and 19 years later it's still going strong and we've got some great projects. So I decided a couple of years ago to start to pull all this information together. I mean, I'd been traveling 2003, 2005, and since then kept a daily diary. So I quite enjoyed writing, but never considered myself a writer, but just quite enjoyed words and what they meant and the meanings and how you could phrase them and put them together, and it was interesting for me. So I made the decision to take some time to write every day and see what I could do, see if I could pull this work together that was sort of spanning across the 19 years really. So I wanted the book to not only talk about Caroline, to educate people on travel safety, but to give a true account of what it was like to go travelling and be a backpacker, and also dealing with long-term grief and how that affects you and affects life. So there were lots of elements that I thought were really important, and elements that I hoped would come together in kind of some cohesive narrative really. There was also an element of dealing with grief and going through a cathartic process for myself. I knew at the time there were a lot of boxes that I'd just closed and I hadn't dealt with, you know, in relation to grief and that kind of thing. So it was interesting for me to be able to go back and reopen those and deal with that. So it was a very cathartic process at the same time. And also really a legacy for Caroline. You know, the idea was always, well, if I can do some justice with what the charity's done, if we can write something about Caroline and the work that she's inspired and the people's lives that she's inspired, and if the book can go on and either help someone who's going through grief or help someone to understand the risks when travelling, then the book's done its job. And I suppose that was really the motivation behind it all. So Caroline was my little sister. There was 5 years between us, so she was always the younger sister. And I think back now with many fond memories of our time together and our lives together and growing up, and the amazing experiences we had, not just as a family but as brother and sister. And you know, the last few years we were together, it was we'd meet each other for lunch, or we'd meet for a coffee and we'd have a chat. And she was a really fantastic person to be around. You know, she had great enthusiasm for life. She was very knowledgeable. She was far more intelligent than I am, and we had some fantastic conversations, and I'll always remember those fondly. I mean, talking to Caroline's friends as well and finding out more about what they thought of her was eye-opening experience, certainly for me, because she was always my little sister. You know, she was always the younger one, or the youngest of the family, because it was just me and her, and obviously and mum and dad. And she was always, you know, my little kid sister who, you know, we could mess about and play around with. But then to see her develop in her own right and become a person and an individual and become respected and admired by her friends, and she had lots of friends. And I think that's a wonderful testament to the kind of person she was. So the charity, well, we started the charity because of what happened to Caroline. We wanted people to travel safely. We wanted to help parents understand the benefits of travel, help backpackers or travellers themselves understand the benefits of travel, and really to support people in a way that we could provide information that could help them travel in a safer environment. You know, I was thinking back, I was so naive when I went travelling. I was very young and, you know, went off backpacking round Europe. We did an interrailing trip for a month. I worked in the French Alps for 10 years for the winter seasons and the summers travelling around Europe. And, you know, then did a couple of years away, going to Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, been over to the US and travelled a little bit around there, and Canada. So I've been incredibly lucky, and now it's obviously very different to what it was back then. But I was very naive and very lucky, and I think, well, I got away with some stuff, and I think most people do. The other side of that is, well, if someone was there saying, well, just think about this, remember that, remember this, be aware of that some of that information might have stuck in my mind and could have changed potentially dangerous situations, or could have made me understand the risks a little bit better and maybe been far more prepared than I was. So that was the concept behind the charity, really, to just help people and encourage them to go travelling, because it's such a wonderful thing, and I know for a fact it can be life-changing. Certainly has been for me, and for the direction that my life has changed. You know, if I hadn't been to these places, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, and certainly wouldn't be where I am today. I know a lot of friends who have gone travelling, or certainly in the French Alps, they've forged fantastic lives. They've built lives and communities for themselves in the Alps, and if they'd have never gone to do a winter season in the first place, or never had that love and that passion and drive to go, and they'd still be in the UK working a job and doing something they probably didn't enjoy as much. The book, I tried to break down into various sections, because I wanted it to not just detail what the charity has done, or the journey that I've been on, or Caroline herself, but I wanted it to give a little bit of information to people as well. So, you know, it details what happened. I was in the French Alps at the time, and getting back to the UK, dealing with that initial devastation of, you know, oh my God, your sister's gone, you know, she's been murdered in Australia, and how we dealt with that as a family, how I started to deal with that as an individual. It talked obviously about Caroline, the wonderful person she was, the enthusiasm she had for life, and You know, goes then into the fact that we thought her life force, her energy, her passion for life was too strong to just let that fade away. So we started the charity. You know, the idea came for Caroline's Rainbow Foundation, where we wanted to help people as Caroline would help people in her life. And we wanted them to travel safely, we wanted them to explore the world, and we wanted to hopefully prevent people from going through the same tragedy that we went through, or we are going through. You know, because grief is a lifetime process, really. And I talk in great detail about my grief personally, the different stages of grief, how that affected me in the short term and the long term. And then, of course, it goes into my travels and 18 months around Australia and New Zealand. And I wanted backpackers to know what it's actually like to go travelling. You know, what it's like to spend 18 months away from home day to day. So there's a few chapters that are written in diary format because I thought it was important for young travellers to understand what it was actually like as a backpacker. And of course, you know, importantly, we talk about the safety info, what we've learned as a charity after 19 years dealing with travel and travel safety. So the key principles that we've got and we've come up with that really help people, or we believe help people to understand the risks, understand the mindset, and travel in a safer environment. And then, you know, there's sort of a few bits about personal evolution, about finding different sides to life, levels of spirituality, just, you know, as you go through life and as you're interested in different things and how these things evolve into different concepts that you look at and you spend a little time exploring, and you know, the wonder of life ultimately. So although the book starts off with a tragic event, and you know, our story it started off with a tragic event, hopefully I believe it's a positive story that can really, well, go to help people and just do a little bit of good and explain a bit more about how Caroline was as a person, and the work that we do as a charity, and where we see travel going in the future. Art plays a huge role, pretty much on a daily basis. I love painting, I love drawing, I've got a real passion for the arts, so anything creative is I'm really in awe of and I'm really inspired by. I got to create my own book cover and put together a piece of work. So this isn't my usual style of painting, but I felt it was inspired. There's obviously the Sydney skyline here, which represents Caroline in Australia and the important link we've got there. I wanted these with the ethereal colours and a bit of texture in the paint, and it was almost like the spiritual side was where we were connecting with Australia, and then obviously the rainbows and, you know, the vivid colour of the rainbows and the importance of that, I think, kind of came through. And in the negative space there's almost another skyline, which you know, Caroline had a real love and passion for New York, and you know, it could, in my mind, it could be a representation of the New York skyline. So I was very lucky that I was allowed to paint and create my own book cover and put my stamp on it in that way. But art has played a huge role, and I really enjoy painting and really enjoy that whole process of creation from a blank canvas to a finished picture. And it's a really rewarding and gives you a lot of space and a lot of time, and puts you in kind of an altered state of consciousness where you become aware of different sides of life, which I really enjoy. If you know me, you know I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so I have a love for skateboarding, a love for snowboarding, and those passions have been with me since I was sort of 14 and first got on a skateboard. And I still do it now, although the body sometimes objects. But it's a great way to meet people, to feel present, to have a community. And certainly where I am now, it's I've been welcomed into the skate community here, and it's such a wonderful experience that you've got this thing in common. It's and everybody knows how difficult it is, but they all do it for the love of it. So there's that connection immediately. And I think you find that in a few things in life, but certainly for me, between skateboarding and snowboarding, I've always managed to find a like-minded community. And I think it's really important to kind of go with the people that you get on with, and find, something in common that can unite you and build a bond between you, because I think that's really important in life. So another thing that people don't know necessarily is I'm very interested in philosophy. I'm very interested in asking the bigger questions of, why are we here? What are we doing? Who are we? These kind of questions. And I've read a few bits from different people that have really inspired me. And I love that endless debate of, we all have a different side to us, and it's sort of exploring those sides, and who are we really? Who are we to different people? And what's the purposes of us being here? And all those kind of questions that you can really get lost in and really have a decent conversation and connect mind to mind, as well as on other levels with people. And it can really stimulate you to new ways of thinking and different ways of looking at the world. The way I can look at it simply is, if we go back to the skateboarding, I can meet skateboarders, and there's a great group and a camaraderie between skateboarders. You're attracted to like minds, and certainly also in the French Alps when doing the winter seasons, or backpacking, and you meet fellow backpackers who've actually gone and done it. They're there out of choice. So immediately you've got that connection with people. Where it gets interesting is, and some people within that group, you'll have a stronger connection. And I've always been interested of why that is. You've connected almost on different levels. And then talk of soulmates, talk of the people who you have a close relation or intimate relationship with, and why do we connect with people on different levels? And that's always interested me. And of course the bigger questions of whether why we're here in the first place, and how we've evolved, and the connection with mind, and the importance of meditation, all these things that open different doorways and levels of sensitivity. And I've been very lucky over the years that I've got to explore that certainly through art, because and writing, because a lot of things I'm spending a lot of time by myself in my own space. And certainly with the art, you're in an altered state as soon as you pick up the brush, and you get used to that state and get used to what you're feeling and get used to other feelings and emotions and sensations that come in during that period. And again, the same with the writing. Suddenly you're inspired to write. And as we were discussing earlier, that if that inspiration hits, you've got to let it flow, and you don't know where it comes from. So I like asking the questions, where does that come from? And who is inspiring me? And where am I going with this? And what's the purpose of this? And I think all those things are really important questions to ask, and can give us a greater insight into who we are, where we're going, and the point of being here. So what advice would I give to other authors? Well, I mean, this is my first book. I felt a drive to do it. I felt a passion to pull this information together, and I think if someone feels that and they understand that, then they should do it. I wrote it for myself, really, I suppose, and because I had the bigger reason of the charity to write it, so they were the driving forces for me. But there was something inside that just knew I had to write it as well, as I sort of further analysed it. And I think if people feel that, then they should do it. And not with the idea of it being published, I suppose, because I never thought I'd get a book deal. I never thought people would want to read it. I I just did it because I wanted to pull the information together, and to see if I could do it. And I think that's a good enough reason as any. So if you feel that drive and that passion to write, then certainly write. And you know, that's it's something that is, I found, a very rewarding process. The best bits, I mean, what did I learn from writing? Well, sometimes it just flows and it's inspired, and you know, reading the words back, I didn't think that I'd written them. You know, there was many occasions where, you know, I mean, the writing process for me took 2 years. It took a long time, and there are many parts that I thought, oh, this is quite good. Did I write this? And well, I hope, and that was really rewarding. And the other side of that is the discipline to read it and reread it and reread it and edit it, and to throw away bits even if you think they are good, if they don't add to the story. And that's probably something that I know a lot more about now. And in this book there's probably a lot of bits that could have been removed, but I have left them in. But they would be the couple of things that I'd say were, you know, when the inspiration hits, just write and scribble down and type and just let it happen. And then the other side would be the discipline to edit and edit and edit and reread and reread.